Hi everyone, if you watch more than one of my videos and like my content, please consider subscribing. It would be a great help to my channel and it's free. Anyway, on to the case today, which brings us to Mold in North Wales in the UK, a town and community in Flintshire, which has a population of around 9,000 people. Historically, the town was based upon coal and lead mining, but today it is a bustling town with markets, pubs and restaurants and some great shopping. Here lived an Irish woman, 37-year-old Catherine Gowing. Catherine was from the small village of Kinnitty in County Offaly. Kinnitty nestles at the foot of Knocknaman on the western slopes of the Sleep Bloom Mountains. She was the youngest daughter from a farming family. Her father, a farmer, and her mother, a teacher. I'm not surprised her mother was a teacher, as back then and even now, a lot of farmers would marry a teacher because of the frequent school holidays, and so they were always available during the busy farming season. From a very young age, Catherine always wanted to be a vet, and there was no better place to cultivate this desire than on her family's farm. She loved the outdoors and living in the countryside, and so moving to Mold in Wales was a perfect fit for her. She worked hard at school and was very academic. She attended St Brendan's Community College in Birr. When her Leaving Cert results came out, she was in the top 3 in the country, getting the highest marks in science subjects. Even though she was a high achiever, there was another side to Catherine. She loved animals and had a very caring personality towards others. Once she finished secondary school, she was offered a place at a university in Budapest in Hungary to become a vet. Catherine fitted right in with her caring nature and fun way of thinking. She made loads of friends, including a woman, Jane Doyle, who was a few years older than her and who was also Irish, which was lovely for them both being so far away from home. They got on like a house on fire. They studied and socialised together, going to festivals and parties. Basically, they were joined at the hip. When they both qualified as vets, Jane had secured a placement with a veterinary clinic in Mold in North Wales, and soon after another vacancy came about, and Jane recommended Catherine to fill the position. Catherine came for an interview and immediately the staff loved her and offered her the job. So the duo was once again back together, now working side by side. Not only did the staff love her, but so did the patients. She had an ease about her, not only with the animals she treated, but also their owners. Soon enough, she was a very popular vet in Mold. Catherine also loved the small town, as it reminded her of home, and it was also handy to get a quick flight home, which was something she did quite often. Accommodation was also provided by the veterinary clinic, and Catherine and Jane would rent this house together. This house was situated in the next village, New Brighton, which was only a 5-minute drive from the practice. By 2012, the two were living their best life. Catherine, now 37, had no shortage of suitors, with her long dark hair, beautiful face and a soft Irish accent. But she was devoted to her work and didn't give herself much time to date, and so was very single. Jane, on the other hand, had a boyfriend and she was smitten. On the weekend of October the 12th, 2012, Jane decided to fly home for the weekend to visit her family in County Meath. Catherine offered to cover her shift that Friday so she could get an early flight and make the most of the weekend. Catherine had also planned a trip home in the coming weeks, and so Jane would be able to return the favour. She was not only going to visit, but she was planning to move home to Ireland permanently, as her parents were getting on in age and she felt she didn't have many years left with them. Her parents were in their late 70s and early 80s by now, and she wanted to be closer to them. That Friday evening, the 12th of October, Catherine finished work as usual at around 8 p.m. and headed to Asda shopping centre. CCTV captured her walking through the door at 8:06 p.m, wearing blue jeans and a brown zip-up top. Catherine spent 33 minutes in Asda. CCTV would capture her again as she left. This is the last known sighting of her. She was also not on call that weekend, and so she arranged to go to dinner at a colleague's house on that Sunday. But by that Sunday, the 14th of October, there was no sign of Catherine. Her work colleague was vexed and concerned. It was out of character for her to not just show up without letting her friend know why. When her friend texted and rang her, they went unanswered. Jane, on the Sunday evening, returned home from Ireland and found the house she shared with Catherine in darkness. But she did notice that the house seemed to have been cleaned and there was a smell of cleaning products in the air. The front door was unlocked, but there was no sign of Catherine or her car. None of Catherine's personal belongings, like her car keys, mobile and handbag, were in the house, so Jane thought that she had also gone away for the weekend and forgot to lock the front door. So with this thought, Jane went to bed, as she was tired from travelling, and having work in the morning, she had to be up early. When morning came, though, there was still no sign of Catherine, but again Jane was not too concerned, as she was sure she would see her at work. When she got to work, her colleagues told her that Catherine had not shown up to work, and rather than be annoyed, they were concerned. One of the veterinary nurses had told the rest of the staff that she had received a half-written text over the weekend from Catherine, which unfortunately was never released to the public. The owner of the practice straight away rang the police to report her missing. Jane tried to contact her on her mobile throughout that Monday, but by now her mobile phone was dead, and she became more and more upset because of this. She then went to Mold police station to give a statement about the previous 24 hours and give them information about Catherine and her car. The police took her disappearance seriously from the start, as Catherine was not the type to go off on a whim or not tell of plans changing, like not turning up for dinner. It was totally out of character for her. Friends and colleagues were interviewed, and it was determined that no one had seen her since she left work that Friday evening. CCTV was examined along with traffic cameras, and it was then that Catherine's car was spotted, a burgundy-coloured Renault Clio, travelling towards Queen's Ferry and to the Asda shopping centre, where she was also seen on CCTV. When Catherine was reported missing, her family were notified, and her sister Emma and brother-in-law Shay flew over to Wales to meet with the police and help in the search. A press conference was held straight away, and Emma gave a heartfelt plea to the public to help find her sister. By Tuesday, the 16th of October, a serious turn in the investigation was made. A new focus was made that Catherine may have been a victim of foul play. Forensics had been examining the house that Catherine and Jane lived in. Although the house was found in a good state, it was noticed that a length of fabric was tied around the post of Catherine's bed in a restrained manner, and semen stains were found on the bedding also. While some would say that this in itself would not be totally weird, Catherine was single, and it was not her habit to bring home random strangers for one-night stands. The semen was recovered for comparison to future DNA. The DNA taken from the sample would reveal that it belonged to someone quite close to home. Going back to Monday, the 14th of October, when Catherine was reported missing, and Jane still at work trying to contact her, her boyfriend Clive Sharp turned up. He wanted to show Jane his new car that he'd just bought. They had only been dating a few months, and she was mad about him. He was a 46-year-old sales consultant at Blizzard Survival in Gwynedd, around 100 miles from Catherine and Jane's home. Jane had met Clive on a dating app. When Clive heard that Catherine was missing, and seeing how upset Jane was, he offered to go with her to the police station to make her statement to them about Catherine. He obviously knew Catherine also, as he often would stay over at the house. It would be said Catherine didn't like him from the start. She felt uncomfortable around him, but never said anything to Jane about this, as she knew she was smitten with him. But she did confide in others, including her mother, that she didn't like him. The day after Catherine was reported missing, they arrested Sharp on suspicion of her murder, even though they had no body and had not yet found her car. You see, once police had Sharp's name, they did an automatic background check on him, and it wasn't good. In fact, alarm bells went off straight away. He had a very disturbing past. What Jane, and most importantly Catherine, didn't know but Sharp was not as charming and loving as he made himself out to be. He had a long criminal past, dating back 30 years, in the surrounding area of his home in Sealand, around 7 miles from Mold. He was a convicted rapist and had served 14 years in total for individual appalling sex crimes, and he was a predator. At the age of 16 in 1982, he had been given a supervision order for making indecent phone calls and sending indecent letters to women. At 17, he was jailed for 3 years for the rape of a 15-year-old girl after holding a piece of glass to her neck. After his release, he did not come to the attention of police again for several years. He married and had a daughter at this time. This was not a happy union, as his wife Gillian suffered from addiction and she passed away in 2000. In 1994, at the age of 26, Sharp was jailed for 3 years for a sex attack on a friend's wife. Within months of his release, he was jailed for 8 years for false imprisonment after tying up a woman and threatening her with a knife. He would serve 5 of the 8-year sentence. Upon his release, he would meet a woman and marry for the second time in 2003, but this marriage would end also in 2011. In the 90s, while in prison, Sharp attended a program for sex offenders. He revealed that he fantasized about tying up a woman and then raping her. He said this fantasy had 2 endings. The woman lives when he grows tired of her, or she dies by strangulation or drowning. This program was ended in 2017 after it showed, rather than discouraging reoffending, it was giving these sex offenders a chance to exchange stories, techniques, contacts and sources. These sessions did not suppress the offenders' desires, but encouraged them by normalising it among the group sessions. So while Sharp was in custody for the murder of Catherine, he was not admitting to anything, and so the search for her continued without his help. He denied continuously that he had anything to do with her disappearance. He told the police that he had been with his family over the weekend, visiting his daughter and his stepfather in nearby Sealand on the Sunday. When the police questioned the daughter and stepfather, they both confirmed this. They said he appeared normal. He was his usual happy chappy self. But when the police checked the CCTV footage for the Friday and Saturday evening, it showed he had been in and around Mold. When Sharp was brought in, his DNA was taken and compared to the DNA from the semen sample, and it matched. 2 days after his detention, which had been extended by magistrates, a couple was out walking near an abandoned quarry on Pinfold Lane in Altamy. Here they would find a burned out car in the woodlands, just 2 miles from Catherine's home. This was on Thursday, the 18th of October. The couple rang the police to inform them of the car, as Catherine's murder was now widespread news and people knew she was missing along with her car. The police arrived at the scene and cordoned off the area. An examination of the vehicle began. The car was completely burnt out and no documentation could be recovered to determine who owned the car. But the shape of the car was distinctive, and the police made it out in fact to be a Renault Clio, and soon they would confirm that it was indeed Catherine's car. But there was no body to be found. This information was relayed to Catherine's sister Emma and her husband, who remained in Wales to help assist the police in their investigation. The family, on hearing of the discovery of the car, feared the worst, and it was unlikely they were going to find Catherine alive. Sharp was told of the discovery, and still he denied knowing anything about the car or the disappearance of Catherine. Magistrates added another 36 hours in order to hold Sharp for questioning. On the 19th of October, the prosecution announced that they felt they had enough evidence to charge Sharp with the murder of Catherine, even though they still had no body. At a special weekend court sitting on the 20th of October, Sharp was officially charged and remanded in custody. When asked in court for his home address, he said he was homeless and gave the address of where he worked. On the 7th of January 2013, Sharp would appear in court again to enter a plea. But in the meantime, the police would continue to look for what they now believed to be the body of Catherine. She was not a missing person anymore. They began their search in the quarry near where the car was found. For several days, police search divers swam and dived in the quarry pools and river that ran nearby it. Cadaver dogs combed the area, but nothing was found. The police widened the search area and combed footage of the movements of Catherine's burgundy Renault Clio and Sharp's black Volvo. Police hoped they could pinpoint an area that they could search and find Catherine's body. On the 31st of October, police divers were searching an area called the Loom, a shallow pool of water off Manor Road in Sealand, a stone's throw away from where Sharp was raised by his mother and stepfather. So this was a well-known place to Sharp and a practical place to get rid of a body. It was also a practical area that police divers could search thoroughly, because it being a shallow pond. Another area nearby was the River Dee, and it too was only a few feet deep. At the bottom of the pond, divers would make their first discovery. 2 packages wrapped loosely in black plastic bags. The items were brought up and put on the bank. When they opened the bags, they would find a human right hand and a human right foot. A post-mortem for the remains was organised for later that day, and it would be a couple of days before the police and the family would get confirmation that these remains belonged to Catherine. On the 2nd of November, an off-duty police officer was out walking on the banks of the River Dee, 2 miles from where the foot and hand were found. As he was walking, he spotted an object floating in the water. He called the police, and the divers recovered a human torso wrapped in plastic. A post-mortem was performed on each set of human remains, but no cause of death could be established, but it was confirmed that indeed they belonged to Catherine. Police continued their search for the rest of Catherine's body, but alas, they would be the only parts recovered. They vowed to continue the search for more body parts, even after Catherine's funeral, but no more were ever recovered. By the new year of 2013, Catherine's remains were flown home to Ireland. On the 2nd of January, her funeral took place. Hundreds of mourners turned up to show their respect and support to the family. The close-knit community of Kinnity, along with her work colleagues, came together to pay their final respects to Catherine. Less than 2 weeks later, on Saturday the 14th of January 2013, Sharp appeared at Mold Crown Court, wearing prison-issue clothes, and said nothing except to confirm his name and address. He was also asked how he pleaded, and Sharp pleaded guilty to the murder of Catherine without any basis of plea. This plea saved the Gowing family a trial and hearing all the terrible details of what Sharp had done to Catherine before and after he killed her. On the 25th of February, Sharp was sentenced to life in prison with a minimum term of 37 years before he could apply for parole. Sharp did not plead guilty out of the goodness of his heart. It was because the evidence stacked against him was undeniable. Traces of his DNA were found on Catherine's body parts, along with the DNA found in her bed. The strip of fabric that was tied to the end of Catherine's bed, samples of that fabric, were also found in Sharp's belongings in the boot of his car, and it was traced back to the company he worked for also. He did refuse to tell the full extent of what he had done to Catherine, but with the evidence and the somewhat sparse account from Sharp, the prosecution was able to piece together the events. The prosecution began by saying that this murder was a sexually motivated one. On Friday, the 12th of October 2012, Sharp entered the house in the middle of the night after Catherine went to bed. He entered her room and began his attack. He subdued her by tying her to the bed with strips of fabric he brought with him, and he then proceeded to rape her several times. It is also thought she was gagged so she could not cry out for help. Then, when he was finished with her, he killed her, not ever revealing how he killed her. He then spent the rest of the night in the house. The next morning he was spotted on CCTV at the same Asda shopping centre that Catherine was last seen at. He bought bin bags, bleach, a petrol can, a screwdriver, and weirdly a Halloween mask. He then went on to a DIY shop and bought a hacksaw along with several blades. Sharp did such a good clean-up job that it couldn't be determined if he dismembered Catherine in the house or not. But police believe that Sharp didn't, as usually the cleanup is not so good that they wouldn't find some traces of blood in the bath or other places in the house. Sharp would never reveal this information or explain why he cut up her body. At some stage during that Saturday evening, he managed to put Catherine's body into her own car and drive it to the quarry and set it alight, burning her belongings, the mobile phone, laptop and handbag. The police believe that Sharp disposed of the body parts using his own car, as when they asked about it, it was discovered he had it valeted and sold it by that Monday and bought a new one. The police traced this car and examined it. After the murder and on the Sunday of that weekend, Sharp spent the day with his family. The prosecution also spoke of how Sharp had met and began dating Jane, Catherine's housemate, a few months before Catherine was murdered, saying how Catherine took an instant dislike to him. Catherine's mother had said she was very unhappy in the house when Sharp came on the scene, but she loved the house and her job, and they came hand in hand. She would often stay in a hotel if Sharp was around. That's how uncomfortable she was around him. Neither Catherine nor Jane had any idea of Sharp's long history of sexual crimes. It also came out that Sharp was involved with another woman who lived in Gwynedd. Knowing that Jane was gone home to Ireland for the weekend, he arranged to meet this woman on the Friday night. They had engaged in sex, but when he tried to engage her in bondage, and while she was restrained, he tried to get her to comply to perverse sexual acts. They argued, she told him to stop, and he walked out, leaving her tied to the bed. This all happened around 10 p.m. that Friday night. This was confirmed by the woman and traffic cameras, which picked up Sharp's black Volvo, travelling from the woman's home. His car was later picked up again around 11 p.m, arriving in the Mold area. Sharp then parked his car around 12:15 a.m. in a hotel car park, which was directly across the road from the housing estate where Catherine lived with Jane. CCTV then showed Sharp getting out of his car and heading in the direction of the housing estate and Catherine's house. An hour passed and he was spotted returning to his car, where he sat for another 90 minutes before returning to Catherine's house at nearly 3 a.m. The prosecution would say that it was at this time he attacked Catherine, and the time before that he was just watching the house. Sharp, it was said, may have developed an unhealthy obsession with Catherine from being around her, and after being rejected by the woman earlier, he decided, knowing that Catherine was probably on her own that night, to take advantage of the situation and fulfill his sexual fantasies, which included murder. There was no forced entry into the house, and it is thought he had his own key to gain entry when he knew Catherine was sound asleep. Before his sentencing, Sharp refused to give any more information on details of the murder or the whereabouts of the rest of Catherine's body. The prosecution spoke for an hour, outlining the whole case before sentencing. Sharp sat in his prison clothes with his head down through the whole hearing. Emma, Catherine's sister, never took her eyes off Sharp. When the prosecution rested, the judge spoke. He said that he would give him the minimum of 42 years, but because he pled guilty, he took this into consideration and instead gave him 37 years. The judge never explained why he did not give him a whole life sentence. Sharp's previous convictions were not revealed either before sentencing, only what he had said in the prison during the sex offenders program he attended. The judge also said, quote, "This is a horrific, cold-hearted murder carried out to fulfill your deviant sexual desires. You are a very serious danger to women. What happened in that 4-hour period is only known to you. You dismembered and disposed of Catherine's body to conceal your crime, a callous act which added immeasurable grief to her family." Emma, Catherine's sister, spoke to the press after the sentencing. She said, quote, "Catherine was brutally murdered, that's a fact. Catherine conducted her life with love, kindness, compassion and integrity, and that's the truth." A quote from Albert Pine, which Catherine lived by, was also read out by Emma. Quote, "What we do for ourselves dies with us. What we do for others and the world is and remains immortal. Emma also thanked the people of Wales for their love and support, and they also thanked the North Wales Police Force, who conducted the largest search and recovery for that area at that time, in order to find and bring home Catherine to them. In 2013, a memorial was held at Our Lady of the Rosary Catholic Church in Buckley, organised by the staff at the veterinary clinic where she once worked. The emotional ceremony included singing Catherine's favourite hymn, Amazing Grace. Children from the local primary school sang All Things Bright and Beautiful. Her work colleagues read eulogies, and a book of remembrance was filled with tributes to Catherine. Emma read out letters they had received from the people of North Wales. She also said that their love had helped them to come to terms with what had happened to Catherine. In the months following Catherine's death, Jane left the veterinary clinic, totally heartbroken and racked with guilt over Catherine, who she loved dearly as a friend. She moved to the northwest of England to try and rebuild her shattered life. I understand this, but there is no way I would lay blame at the feet of Jane. We can't help who we fall for, and Jane had no idea who Sharp truly was. Sharp was well practiced in keeping his past hidden, and even his second wife had said for the first 5 years he was a brilliant husband and father to her children. But then he changed to where she herself felt he would kill her. Sharp remains behind bars to this day, and he is survived by his daughter from his first marriage, who has disowned him. His second wife went on to divorce him. His mother died before he murdered Catherine, and his stepfather was grateful that she never got to see what he had become, he said. Sharp was 47 years old when he was sentenced. He will be 83 before he is ever considered for parole.